Councilmember Stone,
Here.
Councilmember Liu,
Here.
Vice Mayor Vinker. For the record, 2 present.
Right, and Chair Vinker will be here just a few minutes, in a few minutes, but we'll get started. So let's move to public comment, anything that's not on the agenda.
We currently have 1 request to speak. Our first speaker is Cheryl S.
Great, we'll do 3 minutes. Welcome, Cheryl.
Good evening, council members. I am Cheryl Spencer, a member of the Palo Alto branch of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. We call ourselves WILF, and a resident of Palo Alto since 1974. Back in October 2018, that's 6.5 years ago, the Palo Alto City Council passed a motion by 9-0 that staff should develop an ordinance based on the Convention of the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. We call it CEDAW for short. An ordinance based on CEDAW will help the city integrate equity as it relates to girls and women into their decisions. My branch and our Cities for CEDAW coalition have been waiting for 6.5 years to see that ordinance, to see that it is sent to the City Council for its approval, and there is no sign of this ordinance. Looking at the Race and Equity quarterly report from staff to the August 13th, 2024 meeting of this committee, I see a table which provides updates on the remaining 2 assignments, C and L, from the original 17 assignments given by the City Council in November 2020, which pertain to the city's race and equity efforts. The status updates provided in that table outline the most recent action and anticipated upcoming work, but I did not see any mention of any upcoming work on an ordinance based on CEDAW. That assignment was clearly listed in the 2024 and 2025 Equity Action Plan as written by the Ivy Planning Group in April 2024. Item 3.4 in that plan says finalize CEDAW ordinance and present it to the City Council for adoption. To help staff, we have even provided them with copies of such ordinances passed by San Francisco and Berkeley over 15 years ago. I see a different bunch of councillors each time I address your committee on this matter. And here I am again to urge that staff be allowed to work on developing this ordinance. And I hope staff will tell this meeting maybe that they've actually made some progress since I spoke to you last year. I've provided printed copies of these remarks and some old remarks from October 2022 and a letter I wrote to all of council to staff so that you can get some background information. And I just saw that I misspelled my own Gmail address. There's 2 L's in my name, Cheryl. Thank you very much.
And I guess it's back to me.
Yes, that concludes public comment.
All right, thank you. And apologies for being late, although I said I would be here by 7:15, so at least I beat that. And I will go back and watch the public comment on the video to make sure I hear what was said. So thank you all for your accommodation. And with that, let's move to action item 1. Recommend adoption of Palo Alto Safe Streets for All. And so is there a staff report? Welcome.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, committee members. My name is Sylvia Starlack, Planning Manager in the Office of Transportation. Tonight, I'm presenting the final draft of the Palo Alto Safe Streets for All Safety Action Plan. Next slide. Thanks. Tonight's agenda includes the project timeline, key plan elements, and tonight's purpose, a plan overview, a summary of changes incorporated into the plan based on public feedback, and confirmation of the target date for 0 fatal and serious injury collisions. Next slide. Since the start of the year, we've taken the draft plan to Payback, HRC, the City School Transportation Safety Committee, PTC, and Council. We're here this evening to share the final plan and resolution with you with an eye to bringing this plan to Council in June for adoption. To give an overview of the forthcoming slides, I want to share the plan key elements and purpose of bringing this to you tonight. The Safety Action Plan is key to unlocking federal, state, and regional funding. It is also a roadmap for the city to reach zero fatalities and an acknowledgement of the city's commitment to a change in protocols and processes. It's also an opportunity for city staff to use tools such as quick build projects to address safety needs with the ability to change design over time. At the end of this presentation, staff is asking for confirmation of the plan target date and for an endorsement of the resolution adopting the plan. Next slide. There are a few transportation plans being compiled right now, so I wanted to share a bit about the Safety Action Plan and how it complements but is different from the Bicycle and Pedestrian Transportation Plan Update, which is also known as the BPTP Update. Both the SS4A Plan and BPTP Update had a variety of common data inputs, and this was intentional. This included using the same crash data sources, input from various community engagement activities such as Bike Palo Alto, an online survey, an interactive map, as well as various meetings with an internal stakeholder working group. Next slide. Thanks. Some key differences between the two documents include the SS4A plan's focus on safety for all modes of travel, while the BPTP update hones in on bicycle and pedestrian collisions only. The SS4A plan looked at proposed projects from existing plans and reviewed them with a safety lens, while the BPTP update is identifying new projects or updating projects from the 2012 plan. And lastly, the SS4A plan is focused on setting up the city to institutionalize a new safety framework through policy and putting safety at the front of trade-off decisions, while the BPTP update will build off of this policy framework for project implementation. I also wanted to share the relationship of the SS4A plan with other plans. The SS4A plan sets safety as the policy foundation for planning. As noted in the draft resolution and the prior council staff report, this priority could be expressed as project plans come forward by reconfiguring or removing travel or parking lanes to install bicycle or pedestrian facilities. The Bicycle and Pedestrian Transportation Plan that is underway and will be adopted later this year identifies the pedestrian and bicycle network, as well as the facility types to be implemented. And where appropriate, upcoming specific or area plans will prepare a more detailed land use and transportation design and implementation plan. This plan uses the safe system approach to improve the transportation system. This model on this slide describes 5 safe system elements on the inside of the wheel and 6 principles on the outer ring. Next slide. A fundamental objective of the safe system approach is to eliminate fatal and serious injuries for all road users by accommodating human mistakes and keeping impacts on the human body at tolerable levels. What separates the safe system approach from the traditional approach to safety is the ethical imperative that not even one death is acceptable on our roadway system. Next slide. The Swiss cheese model helps to demonstrate how the safe system elements work together to make sure that if one part fails, there are redundant systems in place. Compared to a traditional approach, the safe system approach focuses transportation system design and operation on anticipating human error, proactively managing the transfer of kinetic energy, and sharing responsibility to all who use and maintain the roadway. Next slide. A newer framework in the transportation space looks at safety through the lens of public health. The safe system wheel, showed previously, uses a mixture of strategies for redundancy that was shown by the Swiss cheese graphic. This public health pyramid framework points to the relative efficacy of each of the tiers of strategies available to the city. Next slide. Now that I've gone through the safety framework of this plan, I'll share a bit about what the plan includes. As this plan is funded through the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant, the plan must include these elements to be compliant for future SS4A funding. All 9 of these components are met within the plan. The first element that I want to highlight is a high injury network. Next slide. High injury network, or HIN, refers to a map that identifies specific streets where a disproportionately high number of traffic fatalities and serious injuries occur, illuminating where to focus to reduce traffic-related injuries and deaths. This one is based on crash data from 2018 through 2022. The HIN is shown, and KSIs, which is shorthand for fatal and severe injury collisions, are highlighted in red, while other injury collisions are in blue. The key takeaway from this graphic is that 63% of collisions occur on 4% of Palo Alto streets. The crash analysis showed that our top 3 injury-producing streets are El Camino Real, Middlefield Road, and Embarcadero Road. Next slide. Yeah, thanks. The project team analyzed the 2018 through 2022 collision data set and found areas where exposure, likelihood, and severity risk are higher in the city. This slide shows a quick summary of the 7 safety focus areas that emerged in the data and the amount of fatal or serious injury collisions associated with each. Two slides. Thanks. Throughout the course of this project, we used a variety of methods to collect community feedback. We employed an online survey with an interactive web map, 2 in-person events, a 4-month review period on the draft plan that garnered over 300 comments, various virtual meetings with an internal stakeholder working group, and meetings with advisory committees and council. Next slide. As I noted, there were over 300 comments on this plan. We were able to incorporate almost all of the key themes raised by the public. We heard support for the plan, its initiatives, and for education to remain a key effort in the city's safety work. Concerns about lighting related to nighttime crashes were also voiced, and we received specific requests regarding daylighting treatments, safe routes to school, the San Antonio Road Area Plan, the plan's target date, and regulations for minors riding e-bikes. The final draft incorporates these comments and requests, except for the one about regulating minors on e-bikes. E-bikes are regulated at the state level. At this time, Marin County and jurisdictions in San Diego County are able to restrict the use of e-bikes by minors because they have state level legislation allowing that. Next slide. The SS4A grant funding requires adoption of a target date by which the city would have reduced KSI collisions to 0. Public and advisory committees' comments suggested a 2035 target year instead of 2040, and council feedback also indicated a 2035 target year. Staff are asking for confirmation of this date for the plan. And next slide. In conclusion, based on the crash data analysis and feedback from the public, advisory committees, and council, staff recommend that the Policy and Services Committee recommends council approve the resolution to adopt the SS4A plan with a target date of 2035. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So noting what you just concluded there with that, the charter tonight is whether to recommend to council to adopt the plan, but also something that you said shortly before that, that there was originally the 0 goal year of, what was it, 2030, and that now staff is recommending 2035 or 2040, and I think the draft resolution has 2035 in it. So along with, I just say that as a preface to, along with our questions and thoughts tonight, it sounds like you may, in addition to a recommendation, perhaps want some feedback on that. And is there anything else that you'd particularly like feedback on?
And that's the one thing that we just would like confirmation on. It seemed pretty clear from going through all the committees and council that most people wanted 35. So,
okay, good. I just thought I'd see what we might want to elicit. So with that, I will see if my colleagues have questions. Someone want to kick that off? Okay. Councilmember Stone.
Right, thank you, Chair. Thank you for all this work. Excited that it's moving forward. Definitely enthusiastically supportive. I understand the concerns from staff on the 2035 or 2040. This work is so critical, so important. I don't want to push staff beyond what we're capable of getting this done and making sure that it's getting done right. So I'm fine with the 2035. I don't want to go beyond that because this issue is just so important. And it seems like every day we're hearing of a new local tragedy of someone being seriously harmed or injured. We just had the coach at MA last week. That's really been devastating for the entire community, and in particular the school district that I teach in as well. And so anything we can do to move this along, but also understanding I've been here long enough. I know when staff is saying that something that a timeline is challenging to meet. We can say what we want to say, but at the end of the day, this it comes down to resources and time. And so I think 2035 is not ideal, but is something that I'm willing to support. And then my only area of kind of concern that I want to talk about, I'm glad we got the assistant chief here as well. So I'm glad theme H includes development of regulations for minors riding e-bikes. So it's included in the work plan, but it's not included in the final draft. And I know the staff report mentions that there's a state pilot program going on in Marin. So does that really mean that we're essentially powerless to regulate e-bikes on our own street for minors? I mean, is there anything that we can do in that area?
Yes, and we do have a program we do have something in the plan that addresses e-bikes regarding education, and we're already doing what we can. We're talking to parents, providing resources to them regarding these devices and their children, just letting them know that they are a different thing than a regular bike. But there are so many communities dealing with the same thing that I expect the state is going to move on this pretty soon.
I would think so too. It's getting a lot of bad press out there.
Yeah.
I mean, when I did a Google search this morning, tons of news stories came up. I searched it on Nextdoor. If the clerk can share, I just took this screenshot. I just edit out names and photos for people's privacy, but there are several posts, and you could just see these two posts kind of complaining about minors on e-bikes. One got 78 comments, the other got 100 comments. You look through them. I mean, essentially everybody is concerned about this, and I don't think it's just I don't think it's just people being angry and yelling, "Get off my lawn" type of thing. I mean, this is a serious safety concern. In fact, actually, just on Sunday, when I was about to meet the vice mayor at an event at Mitchell Park Library that we were both participating in, right when I was walking into the parking lot, I heard this really loud screech from Middlefield, and all of a sudden heard these two kids screaming at the top of their lungs and yelling profanity. And I teach high school, I'm used to it. And I looked over and saw these two kids on the back of a motorbike flying down Middlefield. Neither one of them had their helmets on. They were swerving in the lanes. That screech, I mean, one of them probably fell off, especially how the other one was talking to the other, and they made a hard turn and went down a residential street. And I mean, I can't imagine it would take much for them to fall off of that and have a serious head injury. And so that was a major concern for me. That was not my first time seeing that. And clearly from this post, a lot of the community members are experiencing this. So I do really think this is a serious safety issue that we need to address in any way that we can. And I agree. I think people across the state are fed up with this. I think a pilot program is ridiculous. This is one of those things. We don't need a pilot program or a study to tell us this is stupid and dangerous. But that's the infinite wisdom of the state, and that's what they want to do, and that's their power to be able to do it. But I agree that I think they will move quickly on it. And so I'm wondering, can we incorporate this in the work plan, or I guess it is, but in the final draft, so that when, I'm not even gonna say if, when the state expands it and allows cities to be able to enforce, we already have the language, we're ready to just move forward and implement it. is that something then that we can do? And would that require direction to do that since it's in the work plan but it's not in the final draft? How can we be a little more proactive on that?
I mean, I think that if the state changes the law and allows us to regulate, I think we would do that.
Okay, so it being in the work plan, but not in the final draft, that won't slow us down at all.
I don't believe so. I mean, the entire point of the plan is to orient our transportation work around safety.
Good. Okay, perfect. And then and this is probably a question then for the assistant chief. What is being done now when officers do observe behavior like that? But I don't want to walk away with the assumption that nothing happens. I can't imagine the public does as well. Not that we probably have a huge viewing audience tonight.
Right. Assistant Chief Ralph Schneider, Police Department. Thank you. The answer is, as was alluded to here, state law hasn't really kept up with the developments that have occurred with e-vehicles, whether that's scooters or bicycles, and it's been to the frustration of local law enforcement as well as local safety personnel when dealing with bicycles for juveniles and adults, to be honest with you. And there's been some effort, but again, the technology and the speed of these vehicles has evolved much more quickly than the legislature has at the state level. With that, there are still some bicycle-related infractions we can look at. There are still some driving behaviors we can look at. Our officers certainly are not turning a blind eye. At the same time, what is sometimes the case is that these vehicles, as they are vehicles, are fast, they're maneuverable, and they also don't lend themselves to being chased down by a police car. And so the officers have to make a decision in the moment about that as well. So we're certainly aware of it as a community issue, and we hope that visibility, and as was stated earlier, I think the key on this really is parents are typically providing kids with these vehicles because they're not cheap most of the time. And I think frequently parents may not be aware of how dangerous these are and how fast they are. And they may not be aware how unsafely their child is operating it. So I think education really is the key part of this, but our officers are not turning a blind eye to the limited extent that there are enforceable regulations.
Great. Yeah, and I agree. I think the education component is huge here. And I think that's probably a big concern of the proliferation of these in communities like Palo Alto, because they're not cheap at all. And what distinguishes, I guess, a motorcycle from an e-bicycle? Because some of these sure almost look like a motorcycle, at least like an off-road motorcycle.
So you've hit the nail on the head. That's the very question that has been problematic since these have proliferated, which is that you really do have to know a lot about the specific bicycle or specific motorcycle, as it were, to be able to make that distinction. And so the hope is, it used to be the vehicle code would say, hey, a chain-driven device is a bicycle. And that was an easy definition for a bicycle, and everything else was a motorcycle or a car. It's not as easy now, as you point out. And so that's where we're hoping for some of that clarity.
And I guess we don't have, are our school resource officers back in the, no?
No,
Okay, but we have liaison relationships with the school district.
we do.
Curious, has there been an attempt to work with local high schools to try to, that's, I think, a good place, at least for administrators there, to be able to see when kids are getting on to these, and I don't know if there's an educational component to be able to get there.
I know at the younger age groups, particularly, we do a lot of outreach, bike rodeo being one event that we participate in that encourages bike safety and pedestrian safety. I don't think that extends into the high school age groups. So there's probably some more that can be done there, and we'll work on that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. That's it for me.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Lou?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you to staff. I really appreciate this work. It's clear that a lot of heart and a lot of time from the community went into this. I think on the PTC, I had my gripes about the data, about, how the cutoff is 2022, but it is good data. And I'm really glad to just have this written down, kind of memorialized, so to speak. I think 2035 is a good date. I think it is really a very, very hard date. It's like 80 by 30. It's similarly ambitious. Like we have 2 to 15 KSIs per year, but coming out of a post-COVID pattern, that number is probably closer to 10 to 15. And so getting that down to 0 is hard, but I think like our 80 by 30 goals, we should just take a really credible and really ambitious shot at it. A couple of questions. How literally should we take the project list at the Appendix G at the end? Are these just kind of teeing up ideas that will be refined through the BPTP, or should we take a more critical look at what to prioritize or care about right now?
Thank you. There are lots of appendices here. I just want to make sure I have the right one.
Oh,
This is the updated programs and policies list. So
yes, Appendix G and H, I guess, yeah.
Right, I get those two confused sometimes. But this plan is intended to be a living kind of a plan. So we expect to be updating the data pretty regularly. So if you would like to give me a feedback on Appendix G, well, I'll take it and try to include it. But these are the things that came to us from best practice and from the community. So yeah.
No, I think these are pretty good. I could imagine there might be more things you would add or prioritize at the margins, but I don't think I need to comment on these. I just want to confirm that.
Okay, yeah.
Were there any major points of critique or disagreement at the payback or PTC level? Anything interesting for us to think about?
Well, the date conversation was interesting. I think that, there was the same kind of sentiments expressed here that maybe 2040 is more realistic, but we really want this work to happen sooner because it's very urgent. So that tension was there.
Okay. Okay, I mean, that makes sense, and that's definitely expected. And it's, I don't know if it's good or bad if there isn't disagreement on the other parts. Sometimes disagreement is good. One kind of more general plug is really related to the point that Councilmember Stone was making about state policy. And I would love to see a program which is more of the city taking an advocacy position on some of these state issues. The example that I was really going to think about and focus on was AB 645, which allows speeding cameras in cities. That is currently limited to Oakland and San Francisco and Long Beach and LA, I think. But I was talking with our Assembly member, Mark Berman, and this is the kind of thing that if a city is really interested in getting on that list is not a major lift. So maybe something similar could happen at the e-bike program level. Maybe that's a county issue, but it's a lift in the sense that the Assembly member would have to be confident that our city really wants it and will actually do something with it, and that he should use one of his valuable bills, limited number of bills to make amendments like that. But it's not like a big controversial vote that will drag on and things like that. So through the Policy and Services Committee, I would love to maybe make some recommendations to council for state level action that we can actually realistically get done that will make our 2035 goals more feasible. I'm not sure the right way to agendize that or consider that, but I would welcome other thoughts. And yeah, I think those are all of my comments, and I appreciate this plan. I'm happy that it'll move forward pretty smoothly, I expect and hope from here.
Thank you. And I'll add my thanks, Ms. Starlack. We'll never know which ones of us have someone around the dinner table that might not have otherwise been there, but we know we'll spare the community some heartbreak for each life we save. So this is very important work. I know it's a heavy lift and a lot of iterations in getting this far. So much appreciated. My thoughts are very much like my colleagues and like you articulated coming into this meeting about the timing. I think 2035 is the way to leave it for now. I think if we give ourselves that sort of push goal, if it extends, it does. But if we say 2040, it'll take till 2040. So let's give it a go and do our best to get there. I had some thoughts along the same lines as Councilmember Liu, listening to you. In the staff report, I think it was just one city, I think it was Marin, that had the e-bikes sort of exception. And I think you mentioned 3 tonight. I didn't catch the other 2, but how did they get those particular abilities to do their own thing?
I don't have the history behind the legislation, but what I understand is that Marin County, at least unincorporated Marin County, is able to, they reached out to the state and did this. I think they started by convening a committee to look into the crash data, and there was enough of a body of evidence that they convinced the state to allow them to do that. San Diego County, I believe, is allowing cities or via state legislation, cities within San Diego County are able to regulate minors on e-bikes. And so each city, I think, is getting the choice to do it.
Interesting. So there'll at least be some data from that for however long it's been in place. I'm wondering if what we can do is if we can ask our consultants at Townsend to give us an update on this state legislation, because if it's looking optimistic, if it's looking good, alternatively, if it's dead, it would be helpful to know whether to bother to do much more or whether it'll be, would take us just as long, if not longer, to do some self-help, as opposed to potentially even chime in on that.
I was just going to offer, we can talk to Townsend and get that information and share it with the committee. And as the committee has expressed interest of talking about any sort of future sponsorship, there would be opportunities for us to go through that process. So if there's interest, we would be clear on what that process would be if we needed to go down that path as well.
Yeah, and or if the current legislation is one that we might consider a support position, because I don't know that it's risen up to that to date, but perhaps with this in front of mine, maybe it would be. Because I do think when focused on it, there's a lot of concern about e-bikes, because it's like this whole continuum between pedal bikes and motorcycles, and all of a sudden it's an electronic power source. And then some, of course, are hybrid. And so you have 3 classes of e-bikes, and one's more like a motorcycle, one's more like a pedal bike. So it needs some kind of regulation. And the question is, who gets there first, and is it sufficient? So yeah, finding out where we're starting now and what we could do with the easiest lifts so that we can keep a lot of our attention focused on this, that would be terrific. And actually, we've been talking in the context of minors, but to what degree is there legislation for adults on e-bikes?
We can check with Townsend and see if there's anything in that regard during this session.
Yeah, that'd be great, because we're not exempt from, maybe not quite the wild ride that my colleague described, but I think we're not exempt from misbehavior on e-bikes from what I've observed around town from time to time. Question, in our BPTP, do we deal with e-bikes at all, or how do we handle that there?
So there is, the BPTP is being updated to include other kinds of micromobility, so including e-bikes. I'm not sure yet. I don't think we've published anything regarding e-bike regulation at this point. But that is something that it will be considering. So look for that in the draft. Yes.
And that's kind of grown in popularity while you've been in process on this. So that's a challenge when something, the background shifts beneath your feet. But it does seem to me that an important aspect of bicycling is e-bikes to the extent they are bicycles. So that would be something to consider. So I had a question back on, I don't know if these are numbered slides, but the slide after the Swiss cheese slide, which is comparing the traditional approach and the safe system approach. And we don't necessarily need the slide. It's just, well, great. Thank you. So I guess it's in the key themes, theme B was support for education to remain a key effort. And E, request to better integrate safe routes to schools, education and encouragement programs. So I know there's you know, and Councilmember Stone also mentioned the education aspect. And when it came to council for our study session, I know I talked a lot about that. And so I think there's a lot of interest in that. But you know, when I look at the second line there and it talks about the traditional approach is to improve human behavior, the safe system approach is designed for human mistakes / limitations. That feels like a little bit of a false choice. Like I would like for the arrow to be replaced by an and that to me is where education comes into place. I mean, we're going to make mistakes. We are human. I think it's really smart to design for them, and the line above it, you know, there will be some crashes, so let's prevent the serious nature of them to the extent possible. But the education piece that I think is so important to me goes to the traditional improved behavior, because if we can prevent some things from education, because we see a lot of just bizarre stuff that whether it's children or adults or drivers where, you know, you don't need to make that U-turn if you found out you're going the wrong way, like in the middle and hold up traffic and make other people angry and you don't see the kid that's coming, and it's like, behave. So I don't know how we, I see the education in the themes, but I'm wondering how it gets baked into the plan, the approach.
Yeah, we added additional text to the plan to emphasize that education is really throughout the pyramid and throughout the safe system approach pyramid, and throughout every tier of strategies that we do. So we wanted to, we definitely heard the community say what you are saying, and I think there was a bit of a misunderstanding that maybe the safe system approach did not really rely on education, but it does throughout the whole system. So
that's great to hear, because you know, I keep, you know, I flash on sort of like the more you know thing. I think if we just did that with driving, like there's so many things, simple things that people would do, you know, put on your turn signal, just do some things. And if they think about the ramifications of that, it would be nice to have some of that. Okay, well, let's go to public comment if there is any. Madam Clerk, do we have any public commenters on this item?
No, we do not.
Okay. Colleagues, any more comments, questions? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was intrigued by, I think, Deputy Director, you were saying, or sorry, Deputy City Manager, you were saying that we could follow up with Townsend maybe, and what potential options there are to be able to advocate for expanding the pilot program, maybe including the city or the county, or just ending the pilot program and pursuing statewide legislation. I'm curious, and I understand there's definitely challenges, and I think both the vice mayor and the assistant police chief described it well, talking about there's so many different classifications and qualifications, and how do you tell? I think what this reminds me of, and I think the chair and our city attorney will appreciate it, reminds me of when, was it Chief Potter Stewart was asked to define obscenity, and he said, "I know it when I see it." And I feel like that's the same thing with the type of illegal e-bikes that the state is going to be looking for. Like, I can tell, even though technically it's not illegal, I see when I'm out there, I can see what is a good e-bike and a dangerous e-bike. And I believe there's got to be a way for the legislature to be able to craft that. So I understand it's challenging. I think it'd be challenging for us as well, but an important one, because I think this problem is just going to get worse. And so I don't know if you need direction from us to engage with Townsend on this issue, or just our kind of comments if this is sufficient.
Very good question. Because your legislative guidelines do talk about general safety things, I'll double check, but I feel like in general, if we're promoting safety and legislative, I feel like this would fit within your legislative guidelines, but I will double check just to make sure. I'll do that before the item wraps.
Great, thank you. And with that, I can move the staff recommendation.
Please.
I'll move the staff recommendation. Then I guess the staff recommendation was it specific to 2035?
Yes.
Okay, then great. Then I'll move the staff recommendation.
Second.
Second.
All right, thank you. Well, no further discussion. Let's take a vote.
Vice Mayor Vinker,
Yes.
Councilmember Stone,
Yes.
Councilmember Lou,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk, and thank you, Ms. Starlack. I really appreciate this important work. Okay, item 2 has been removed from the agenda, so we will move to action item 3. Recommend City Council approval to amend the FY 2024 and FY 2025 budgets for task orders to realign the authorized budgets with a net zero impact. Okay, and welcome, Ms. Murdoch. I assume that is you who will be presenting?
That is correct. Good evening, committee members.
Good
Kate Murdoch, City Auditor. The Office of the City Auditors is seeking City Council approval, and we can thank you, to realign the budgets for 3 task orders, 2 from FY 24 and 1 from FY 25. Council approved extensions for 2 FY 24 task orders through June 30th, 2025. These task orders were Task Order 4.25, Emergency Preparedness Wildfire, and Task Order 4.28, Dispatch Center Assessment. We recommend City Council approve increasing the budget for emergency preparedness by $5,000 and the budget for the Dispatch Center Assessment by $15,000 to cover costs for these audits that were in excess of the original budgets. We recommend reducing the task order budget for Task 4.32, which was the CSD Equipment and Materials Inventory Management Audit, by $20,000 to cover these costs. The scope of work for the inventory management audit was not as great as we originally thought, resulting in savings. So this would result in no overall change to the FY 2025 budget. Happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you. Do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not have any requests to speak.
Okay. Colleagues, any questions for Ms. Murdoch? I'm not seeing any. I did have one, and I'm seeking to find my note here. Bear with me one moment. Please, go ahead.
No, I don't have any questions. I fully support this, especially ensuring that we're providing the resources for the auditor to be able to complete the wildfire assessment. I really think the wildfire prevention needs to be one of our top priorities, given the disastrous results we've seen over the last decade in California and our region, and I only anticipate that to get worse. So glad that we're we're kind of, I guess, rearranging priorities in order to be able to make sure that that gets done. So happy to support this.
Yeah, maybe one quick question, actually, looking at the task orders in our attachments or appendixes. I see a red strike through that says, for example, emergency preparedness, $73,000 and $110 struck through. And then it says 75,000 increased by 2,000. Is that what we wanted to say, or am I just kind of looking at that the wrong way? Should it say increase by 5,000 or 15,000?
That's a great question. So we did amend the budget for wildfire once before. And then it just continued to be more and additional work. It was a highly complex topic. And so there was a lot of back and forth between the audit office and staff. And it ended up, incurring additional costs. We actually wrote off some of those costs, but as costs continued to rise, I thought, well, we're saving some in this other area. I'm going to go and see if we can realign the budget. So we actually wrote off some costs, and that will not include the costs that we already wrote off, but these are additional costs that we incurred to get that reporting done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the red amount is the 75,000 is the final amount. It's just the increase by $2,000 is wrong. Like it was like the baseline wasn't right, but it actually did reflect an increase by the amounts otherwise specified.
Correct.
Yeah, I think this is good. Let us know if there's anything else that we could reprioritize. Kind of looks like maybe from the beginning that we could have spent less effort on inventory management and more on wildfire preparedness. So if there's anything else like that you want to proactively flag, I think that'd be great. And yeah, seems fine.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I think I just want to confirm that I think I know the answer to my question. Just want to confirm. Yeah, so I have no issues with moving transfer the unused funds to the two tasks, the emergency preparedness and the dispatcher center assessment. Those are key things, and no worries there. And thank you for writing off what you did. I appreciate that. Just wanted to make sure that, so with the CSD inventory management, is that task done? And so those are unused. I just want to make sure we don't short that.
Sure. So that is in reporting, and it should be wrapping up this week. And then should come to policy and services either in June, or if not June, then in August.
Okay, because that was my only concern, is just to make sure that, I do appreciate the net zero budget impact. That's greatly appreciated right now as we're in the budget cycle for the next year. Just wanted to make sure that left you enough to complete that. Audit.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Fabulous. Okay. Did I already ask for, did I ask for public comment? If not,
You did.
yeah, see? I thought I did. Still none. Okay. All right. Anything else from my colleagues?
And I just wanted to remind the committee that the wildfire audit went to this committee in April. And so the auditor's office is working to bring those items that have been at committee to full council.
All right, thank you for that. Yes, I remember when the chief was here. Okay, so do you need a motion to approve this, or do we need to recommend to council? I'll recommend to council, it looks like. It's George's turn.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
And I'll second.
Excellent. Let's take a vote, please.
Councilmember Lou,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Vinker,
Yes.
Councilmember Stone.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank
Deputy
you.
City Manager.
Before you move to the next item, I did want to answer the question on the legislative guidelines, just as Ms. Pryor and I were looking the items up. In the transportation section of your legislative guidelines, there's one that says deter single occupancy drivers and alleviates local traffic congestion and promote active transportation safety infrastructure. So that last piece of it, I think, will cover our ability to work on it.
Active transportation safety infrastructure. That sounds right.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Appreciate you doing
And
that.
thank you, Christine.
Yes, thank you for doing that real time. Very helpful. Okay, so with that, and thank you, well, Ms. Murdoch's gone, but thank you for joining us. We'll move to item 4, discussion and direction on establishing a council chambers use and reservation policy. So we'll have ready for a staff staff presentation on that.
All right. Good evening, Chair and committee members. Francesca Reyes, Deputy City Clerk. Tonight, staff will present a draft council chambers use and reservation policy. And just to note, this also includes the community meeting room and the flexible meeting room. So the city clerk's office occasionally receives requests from outside government agencies and nonprofit organizations to use these spaces. These requests typically come to the city clerk's office from city staff, council members, or at times members of the public. Currently, these requests are evaluated on a case-by-case basis, depending on staff capacity, space availability, and logistical considerations. The lack of a clear policy has led to challenges in decision-making and questions regarding the criteria for use, which this draft policy aims to address. Next slide. So as part of today's presentation, I'd like to highlight the key purposes of the draft policy. The primary goal is to ensure that the city spaces, especially the council chambers, are used first and foremost for official city and government-related functions. The second is that we aim to establish clear and consistent guidelines for how these spaces can be reserved and used. The policy also helps minimize liability and protect city resources, including staff time and facility conditions. And finally, it's designed to promote fairness, transparency, and efficiency on how we manage and allocate these public spaces. Next slide. So to provide structure and clarity, staff proposes the following priority framework for use of the chambers. Priority 1, public meetings of the city council, its committees, BCC, and use by city staff. Priority 2, meetings and events organized by other government agencies. Priority 1 includes the city's essential government functions. Examples include the council meetings, committee meetings, used by city departments for official business. One example is I have a hard time saying this, San Francisco JPA, where a council member has a seat, falls under this top priority category. Priority 2 refers to events, meetings organized by other public agencies. I believe one of the examples is that the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors held a special meeting at some point a few years ago at City Hall. So these types of collaborations reflect intergovernmental partnerships, but are considered secondary to direct city functions. If the committee is considering a 501c3 nonprofits to use the spaces, the criteria of the reservation would have to be free and open to the public. We want to emphasize that the inclusion of this priority 3 is a policy decision. It's not a requirement. And while it could increase community access to city spaces, it could also attract a wide variety of groups seeking to raise their public profile using a government venue. So what we're seeking feedback on today is whether to allow nonprofit organizations to access the facility use under this tier, and if so, what conditions, if any, should apply. Next slide, please. So for this slide, in this section, we'll walk through the proposed deposit and fee structure related to the city facilities to be applied to just priority 2 and, if included, priority 3. So staff is recommending a refundable deposit of $250. This deposit would serve 2 key purposes. One is to secure the reservation, and second is to cover potential costs. The deposit would be held until after the event and may be used if the event exceeds its scheduled time, in which case the attendant fee will be deducted from that deposit, or if there are any cleaning needs or damages identified during the post-event inspection. But if the facility passes inspection and there are no policy violations, the full deposit will be refunded. This encourages users to respect facility guidelines and timelines. For the attendant fee would apply in cases where city staff are required to provide day of event support needed to be present after hours, or if additional cleaning and room organization is needed. A technology assistance fee may also be applied when audio / visual services are requested or streaming support is required. Please note, at least this is just an initial estimate. Future refinement will be needed based on actual usage and cost data. I want to clarify that the technology, equipment, and setup are primarily reserved for governmental functions such as, the city council meetings and the board and commission meetings. These occur regularly and take precedence in scheduling and resource allocation. So in the event any of these items are actually damaged, it would take a considerable amount of time for us to have to purchase that and then have to install that, test to see if that works in time for any of these meetings that we have scheduled. So staff recommends, again, a $250 refundable deposit to cover potential damages. And the event organizers may also be responsible for attendant fees and technology support costs based on actual resource needs. These fees align with the existing municipal fee schedule and ensure responsible and fair use of the facility. Next slide. First, for this slide, I'll be covering the reservations and cancellations, but mainly summing up the draft policy procedures. First, all requests must be made no later than 30 days before the event and no earlier than 6 months in advance. This time frame allows for orderly scheduling and appropriate staff planning. The city clerk is responsible for setting final reservation dates and times, ensuring alignment with the city's operational priorities. It is emphasized that the city may cancel reservations on short notice in the event of an emergency or when a special meeting of the city council must be held. If a user must cancel their reservation, this must be done in writing 10 days before the event. Any cancellations less than 7 days in advance will result in a forfeiture of the deposit as a way to recover planning and administrative costs. For events with 100 or more participants, organizers will be required to provide proof of liability insurance. This is a standard risk management measure to protect both the event host and the city. And finally, security may be required depending on the nature of the reservation. It's just important to clarify that the city will not provide police officers or city staff for day of event security services. If security is needed, it will be at the responsibility of the event organizer to arrange appropriate coverage. Next slide. So this slide provides an overview of how neighboring jurisdictions are approaching the use of their council chambers. Staff has reviewed policies from these nearby cities, each of which offer different uses, restrictions, and fees, and sometimes no fees. In contrast, staff found that jurisdictions such as Atherton and Portola Valley do not currently have a formal council chambers policy in place. At this time, it's unclear whether these cities are intentionally restricting public or non-governmental use, or if they are considering requests on a case-by-case basis without a documented framework, thus highlighting the varying levels of formality and transparency among jurisdictions when it comes to managing public access to government facilities. Next slide. So to conclude, we are seeking input and direction on several key areas related to the proposed policy. First, we ask that you review, discuss, and provide feedback on the draft policy as a whole. It is a draft, so any edits that you'd like to make, we're welcoming those recommendations. Next, we ask for your feedback on whether or not to include a priority 3 category that would allow the 501c nonprofit organizations. And as noted earlier, this is a significant policy decision that would broaden community access. Lastly, we ask that you review and provide feedback on the proposed fee structure. These charges would apply to priority 2 and if included, priority 3, and is intended to cover actual costs and for any other potential damages. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the committee for your thoughts, and staff is ready to answer questions and receive your recommendations. Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I comment very briefly? So if the committee is interested in considering that category 3 501c3 group, under the law, there are 2 different models that you could choose from. They're fairly distinct. And so if you're interested in having that discussion, I can explain them for your consideration.
Thank you. And so thank you, Ms. Reyes, for that presentation. There's clearly a lot of thought has gone into this from all of our staff. I know multiple departments have looked at this, and we appreciate that. Is there any public comment on this item?
We do not have any requests to speak.
Okay, excellent. All right, well, I'll bring it back to the dais. Who would like to start? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question for staff. How often does this come up in terms of priority 2 or priority 3 groups? Is it, something that there's actually a lot of demand for?
So our office does receive, I want to say, if we were to give you a rounded number, maybe like about 3 requests to 4 requests a month. However, it's not that we have made it public that other folks are able to use it. I think that council or staff tell the people that this venue is a reservation potential, and so that's how we know. But I don't know. I mean, if there were more people interested, then more people would be able to spread the word. But it's not requested so often.
Right. Okay.
Just to clarify in one moment, so it's been more increasingly over the years, but more so maybe about 5 a year, maybe a little less frequently than 3 a month for speaking for category 2 and 3. But it has, like I mentioned, increasingly over the last few years been requested.
Okay. I guess also just looking at fees, I know that actually that the fees for Lucy Stern and Cubberley and Mitchell Park are different, and I think generally higher than these fees. Is there any reason why the fees would be different? I think like Lucy Stern and Mitchell Park, for example, the deposit is $500 and the attendant is slightly more per hour and things like that.
So when discussing with other staff for the deposit being higher, that is at an actual scale rate that they found would be appropriate for the events that are being held at their facilities. For example, those venues that you mentioned, they're more likely to have birthdays, weddings, bat mitzvahs, but for here, this type of venue probably wouldn't call for such need to charge people that are interested in using the space. But in the municipal codes, I mentioned in the staff report, there is this range of price. And so 500 is just what has been set based off CSD. And another thing is that their spaces also have a lot of features that the council chambers doesn't have, or the community meeting room. They have like a kitchen access that they can have. They have, kind of like the park venue, the environment overall. Here, we wouldn't provide, parking preferences. We don't allow them any access to our kitchens. Food is not even allowed in here or in our meeting rooms. So that's why I think that, and plus the increase of interest in those venues are a lot more higher than it would be here.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this all sounds reasonable, and I would not be in favor of the priority 3 501c3 groups. I think there are a lot of issues with, or the 501c3 groups are just such a broad range of groups, and we wouldn't want to, we wouldn't want to be in a dilemma where we may have perceived viewpoint discrimination, or a dilemma where groups that we otherwise don't support use this space. And net, they have plenty of other options in the city to get affordable nonprofit rate rentals at all of our other venues. So I'm fine with just priority 2.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stowe.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Reyes and the clerk's office for developing this policy. Overall, I think it looks really good. I have no problem with the fees, of course. How are we defining a priority 1 and priority 2 makes a lot of sense. I'm a little torn on priority 3, and I just have some concerns, and I'm sure I'll turn these over then to the city attorney. So I understand First Amendment law is going to preclude us from screening groups based on their views, and so limiting the type of groups is I think makes a lot of sense with the priority 3 approach. I think the 501c3, I think that is a smart way to kind of draw that line for group 3. I am concerned about how the clerk, not that I don't have all the confidence in the world, but how the clerk makes the determination, really any government agent makes the determination that something is a public benefit, and how that would not raise First Amendment issues. So that's kind of my first question. That's really just my question. And then my concern really, and Councilmember Liu was getting at it, according to the ADL, there has been an extreme increase in hate groups seeking and receiving 501c3 status over the years and abusing that tax exempt title to be able to just further their own hateful objectives. And although I know nonprofit status should generally not be provided under federal law to these groups that are kind of just more engaging in political speech, they've been finding loopholes in order to be able to do that. Like, for example, in 2019, and most of these came about with under the first Trump administration, so I would imagine we're going to see a further proliferation of it again. The IRS granted tax exempt status to the Oath Keepers Educational Foundation, several 3%er groups across the country. Those are extremist anti-government militia groups. So we're seeing this growth, and so I'm concerned if we move in this direction, and I think this is the only logical direction to move in if we want to expand it beyond priority 1 and priority 2. But I'm concerned we're welcoming hate groups to host hate rallies within our chambers, and will that provision of public benefit be enough? And so if you can speak to that.
Yes, so I'll go straight at the core of your concern and then back up and talk about 2 models. Yes, I agree with you that the suggestion that we could use a concept like public benefit to make distinctions is a real challenge. Really, you're looking to set, if you're in that mode of allowing 501c3s generally, you can set some rules up front, such as you must be a 501c3. You could set some kind of rule around local connection, free and open to the public. But beyond that, government officials should not be making distinctions between groups based on their viewpoint. And the concept of public benefit is pretty general and vague, and it does open up the possibility that the clerk would be put into a position where her decisions on that could be viewed by some as related to the viewpoint of the various groups. So it really would be better if you wanted to go down that road to set some neutral and clear criteria, objective criteria up front, and then any qualifying entity would then have an opportunity to use the space if it was available. The other model solves this, but is quite a bit narrower, which is to say that private groups, 501c3 groups, would only be allowed to use the space if it was a joint city-sponsored activity. So the city could be sponsoring or partnering with a 501c3, and that takes the governmental decision into a different category called government speech. So akin to, for example, our website is not a free and open forum for anyone. It's the city of Palo Alto as a government entity speaking in the way that it wishes to speak to the public. So by having that requirement that it
only be available if the city was co-sponsoring. You would be able to curate the space and select and choose amongst folks that you wanted to have use the space. I would say that it's a relatively narrow group of folks who, for example, in my recollection, the space has occasionally been used, this space, by League of Women Voters, the local newspaper, for basic civic education activities. Well, the city will not co-sponsor that because it's not appropriate for us to be engaging in candidate forums, for example. So that would not enable some of the things that traditionally maybe people have wanted to have.
That was really helpful. I appreciate that. And because I didn't want to completely shut the door at priority 2, but I felt like this was kind of creating a can of worms that I was not comfortable with. So I'll support that. I know originally last year I did have a concern about the Weekly always hosted the candidate forum in here. That was a great tradition. Selfishly, I was really excited to have home field advantage. Sorry, Councilmember Lou, but you did really well in the debates without it. And so having now gone through that, I actually found that to be a much fairer process, because I remember in 2020, I think, having the debate here and finding that felt unfair to have council members having, again, that home field advantage and not not challengers. And so actually having gone into this year now, seeing what the forum season was like without it being here, I thought was actually created a more level playing field, and I think it worked for everybody, because that was really, I think, prior to that experience, one of the big things that I thought was frustrating about kind of the new direction that we took. But I actually think it worked out for the best. So yeah, so I'll support priority 1, priority 2, and then a modified priority 3 with the city sponsorship. Don't know if Councilmember Lou is in favor of that bit of change, but that's all I've got.
I'll tell you what, I'll comment a bit and then we can take another turnaround. I am just curious, just a little more detail on the demand question. I had the same questions as Councilmember Lou, and I understand there's, a handful, but I guess it's not so much just how many as, how are there any in category 2 from other governmental agencies, or are most of them from priority 3, the 501c3s? And even within that, what's the nature of them? I'm just curious to get a little more flavor for what we're saying yes and no to the extent it's appropriate to disclose it. Or the type of events. Or I can ask something else if you want to confer. I did not mean to stump you.
Yeah. I'm happy to respond.
Are you asking, sorry, I missed priority 1 or priority 2 is the examples you're looking for? Priority 2.
2 and 3.
2 and 3. So an example for priority 2 would be
VTA's ad hoc committee on.
So this is where we need a little bit of, I guess, clarification from the committee on this. So there's certain council members that sit on certain boards or outside agencies where they are requesting, for example, the JPA. So one of our council members sits on that, and oftentimes they request to have the meeting here in council chambers. So that is, we would consider priority 1. However, more recently, a few months ago, we've gotten a request from Samtrans, VTA Mobility Hub. Those are things that kind of we're trying to figure out which priority, more so priority 2 it would fall to. And in that instance, since we didn't have the policy, we brought it to council for their decision on consent. City manager, if you had any other thoughts.
Let's see, I would also note, there have been other inquiries, in one case from the California Transportation Commission. But
Interesting.
in that situation, there were too many people, and it wouldn't fit here anyway. But I would say occasionally it does come up as a topic of interest from other agencies.
That's interesting. Because on the one hand, you know, we don't necessarily need to be subsidizing these other agencies. On the other hand, it does give us a certain level of prominence to have them here in our chambers. It makes me want to set a fee for them beyond just the deposit is what, no, seriously. Because, you know, I sit on a variety of boards, and I know there are sometimes other entities that get fees for that type of thing. And so,
Councilmember Vinker, if I may
Yeah.
interrupt, I remembered another one for priority 2 would be Anna Eshu's art event that she, I think over the last few years has requested to use our council space for her, not sure if I'm calling it the correct, but it's an art exhibition that she
oh,
puts art up in the chambers. So
interesting.
that would be a priority 2 qualifier.
Okay. Interesting. And thank you for this. I did not mean to do a memory test. I just, it helps us to get a flavor of it. So I appreciate that. And so I too, I share my colleagues' concerns about just sort of opening it up broadly to C3s. I think that Councilmember Liu mentioned that, you know, there could be a perception of bias, even if there's not, even if we don't have rules and we're not picking and choosing if certain entities ask and others don't, or if there's scheduling conflicts for one and another. It's just opening up a whole can of worms. And we can imagine lots of other scenarios where the use of the chambers might not be with the decorum that we would want. And so but I am intrigued by the city-sponsored option. I'm thinking of groups like Neighbors Abroad, you know, and others that where they might want to do something more official and maybe have the space. And so if it were city-sponsored, makes more sense. And that's an easier sort of bright line to draw, because it's the judgment calls that make me nervous.
Yeah, I think in that context, we'd presumably be using the existing city co-sponsorship policy that would enable what you just described, and at the same time would not get us involved in things like candidate forums and the like.
Right. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think that I'm really leaning that way. But while we're on the, you know, decorum in the chambers, I was looking at, I appreciate the chamber use policy that was attached here, that draft. And there's a section 8 on user responsibilities, and the first subsection is on conduct. And appreciate that the user is responsible for all accidents, injuries, damages, and repair costs, et cetera. If we restrict the uses we're discussing, we may not need what I'm about to say, but if we were to open it up more broadly, having been here when Chambers was a little bit, it's a little bit of a challenging place to be during an event recently. I would encourage us to say something like, if the user cannot maintain compliance with the rules by attendees, the city reserves the right to immediately call an end to the event. Because I don't know that we would rarely exercise that, and I don't know if there's legal issues around that, but I feel like there are certain things that if they get out of control, we can say, you're done. Because it was clear to me, at least in one instance, there was no control by the sponsors of the event over the attendees. And, you know, we did not have an incident of note, but we do not want to have one that goes beyond that. So I think we probably don't need to discuss that unless we extend beyond, but well, actually, I'm curious whether staff would think we should have something like that, because I didn't see anything like that in user policy about being able to shut it down if it gets out of control. We can obviously do that for ourselves, but what about for others?
Well, I think something of the practical challenge there is that the city wouldn't necessarily have a presence at the event if it were effectively rented to another organization. And so I think the question that it raises is how we would shut it down. You know, it would, I think, require a more proactive action in that scenario than we would perhaps be set up to do.
Yeah, it's more of a reservation in case, we anticipated it and for a given event had someone on site, but yeah. City attorney has.
To that very important point, I'd add that if we did have a rule like that, then the decision to not shut it down or to shut it down would be something that the city owns.
Mhm.
And so you'd be needing to be willing to take on responsibility for public accountability around that decision either way.
Even if it's not the city shall or will, it's just the city reserves the right to do it if.
I would imagine that on a more general basis, that should there be any circumstances that do become problematic, that we would work with the organizers in advance of the actual event. I think in the moment of an event that doesn't go well, it does raise some more challenging scenarios. So I think we will want to have some basic language that does provide the prerogative to withdraw the permission and figure out how best to work within that construct.
And there's language right now in the draft policy that may be a starting place for this. Security may be required and the user must hire a licensed insured security firm approved by the city and provide proof of the event security plan. So I believe the intention there was sort of starting the conversation between the event organizer and the clerk's office staff so they can start to ask questions and discuss that with our team internally and understand if the scope of the event that they're discussing meets maybe what they're proposing as some level of accountability within the space of the event itself. So maybe more language can be added there. That's on page 3, I believe, of the policy and the fees section.
Yeah, and I'll leave it to staff to contemplate. I wanted to raise it just simply because in the event that was here when there was a candidate forum and there was, the chambers was packed and it was kind of a stutter step event. It would, the forum was halted, people hung out for a while, the forum started again. It just kind of kept going like that. And it could have gone south in a very severe way. And just having the prerogative to say enough is something that I wanted to raise because it was, if it becomes clear to us and not so clear to the folks renting the space, it may be something I thought we just might want to consider being able to do. Okay, so I think that's the last of, and so just on the deposit amount, I'm fine with that. The attendant, whatever you think is appropriate, but, is the attendant fee per hour different than Mitchell Park? Because I understand why some of the other things, the deposit is what it is, but.
Yes, that's actually the same as what CSD is putting out for the attendant fee.
Perfect. Okay, that's great. Okay, so I think what I'm leaning to is 1, 2, and half a 3. I think you all know what I mean. So we'll see if Councilmember Liu has comments now that we've explored this third option.
Councilmember, I apologize. Would you turn your mic on just so folks in Zoom can hear you?
Or test, did I just, okay, that works. Yeah, $49 is the fee for Mitchell Park, $75 if it's on holidays or overtime. And I think it says the fee is $47 here, but it's such a marginal difference.
You're correct. I think that they just recently have a change in their fees. And at that time when that was input, it was 47. That's a mistake on my end.
Oh, yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. No, no worries. And so that's like not even an issue. I think I still have some reservations about this setup for option 3. And I think even within the context of co-sponsorship, there could be perceived bias or discrimination or legal challenges to such, right? Like, I can imagine a hypothetical case where Anna Eshu has a new nonprofit and wants to host an art event, and we let her host it here. And then, like, the Pope comes a week later and says, I want to host an art event, and I'll be in my fancy dress. I'll speak to the crowd from right here. It might feel like a church, a bunch of crucifixes all over the walls. It wouldn't quite feel mutual or right for government, for us to, have the Pope and all this stuff right here. If we say, no, we won't really co-sponsor your event, Pope, couldn't the Catholic Church say you sponsored a almost identical event the week before and you're just going to exclude my event only because we are Catholic, only because the perception of religious incorporation is not proper in a government space? Like, I think there are actual lawsuits about this right now, right? So like, I don't think the halfway option for option 3 really gets us totally safe, though I realize it is better than just letting anyone go in here. There's still perceptions of bias and perception and legal risk.
So 2 brief comments. One is that there is a recognized and well-articulated doctrine around government speech that does provide government with more deference in choosing to associate or promote speech or not participate in speech than a public forum. So this is a quite well-articulated existing doctrine. One exception area likely to that, and this is a developing area of the law, is if you're making those decisions based on the exercise of religion. And that is an area of our constitutional jurisprudence that's in flux at this time, but you're reading the tea leaves correctly, that people could bring those kinds of challenges if that was the motivation.
I mean, there's a Supreme Court case right now, decision to be released about perhaps analogous situation with a religious charter school that wants public funding, that was denied public funding because it is explicitly religious and explicitly kind of servicing the purposes of public education, but they may well win, and therefore there could be some consequences for us. I don't know.
Everything could be different.
Yeah.
You're quite right.
I guess the other point I would say is if we actually have something public for all nonprofits on our website, and this is administered through the clerk's office and not CSD, that feels like it could become a non-trivial amount of work that is really not what we want the clerk's office to be spending like more than a trivial amount of time on for like a few events here and there. So I would also use that to kind of pull us away from option 3.
Yeah, so part of the reason I'm interested in option 3.5 is that we pretty much do that in other venues right now. So I don't know why this one would be any different. And I don't think we've had much of a problem to date because I don't know that we advertise it on the website so much as, I'm trying to remember how I even became aware of it. But I think if you're already working with the city is kind of the, I don't know, de facto, that I actually don't know exactly how it's done, but it seems to not have generated big issues or a big workload thus far. So I was just trying to extend to this space what we already do in other spaces. I think that's what's being suggested by staff as an option. So that's why I'm interested in it. I'm just, but could you remind me, I read it in here and now I've forgotten. Are we looking at doing this just during business hours or we're looking at evenings, weekends?
So like, let's just say, for example, in the case of a special event where how we recognize like a Joe Simidian, if for some reason he wanted to be acknowledged here, and as you know, that event was on Saturday, that would be great because that would allow for it. But if we were to say it's only operational, or we only allow for events during the operational hours, then that means in that case, we would have had told Joe no.
Oh, I know at other
yeah.
venues, but I'm talking the proposal for
Oh,
this.
Yes, yes.
Sorry if I may. So it really just depends. If we allow a priority 3 events, it may have the possibility of having after hours events, like the example of Anna Eshu's. That was typically in the afternoon, or a candidate forum. I know that you guys are not totally leaning towards that, but in that case, we did have a staff member on site from the clerk's office upstairs to be able to lock the doors after.
Yeah.
And whatnot.
The only reason I ask is I could think of other government entities might also want an evening meeting. And I would suggest that we just do the same thing we do at other venues and have the attendant fee during normal business hours be the 47 or 9, and that we have the increased fee for after. That's my only reason for asking. If we were to include those, or maybe you want to just do weekday nights since you're here and not have weekends for chambers. But whatever it is, I think if you're here beyond workday hours, you should feel free to charge more.
And then just to clarify on Councilmember Lou's comments on may increase clerk staff time. So you're correct. We are already doing this. So we already booked the rooms for priority 1, priority 2, and before the last few years, we've actually been allowing here and there on a case-by-case basis priority 3. So those are things that we're already doing, but what this policy really sets is some guidelines and parameters to it. So I wouldn't hope much would change. It's more so guidelines on how we can facilitate this process of reservations.
Sure. I mean, if it's just guidelines for internal policy and we don't actually publicize this, so when people go on the city website and they're like, oh, Mitchell Park, oh, Coverly, oh, City Hall, then this won't actually be a big issue. And don't really have a strong take then on option 3.5. I still think option 3.5 is still kind of different though, because if we're co-sponsoring, that's just different. And, if it's from community services, I imagine they have a big staff pool of, maybe seasonal folks, maybe other folks who can just kind of be an attendant. But for City Hall, would the attendant actually be someone from the clerk's office? Yeah, like that's not as ideal as that's much more expensive than and potentially bad for work-life balance compared to just the larger and more flexible work pool that CSD potentially has. So, if it's something that we're not actually publicizing, that really just continues what we're doing right now and it's pretty manageable, I don't think it's a big deal. I just wouldn't want us to be in a position where we're hosting a lot of events or making difficult choices about what to host.
Thank you. Councilmember Stone.
Thank you, Chair. I'll move the staff recommendation of priority 1, priority 2, and I'll add priority 3, but modify it per the city attorney's recommended language for only city-sponsored events. I mean, I don't believe there are. I mean, the threshold for the city sponsoring these events is, I've come to find, pretty high, and it's always within the discretion of city staff. If the clerk's office feels like they are overstretched and can't handle it, that message is going to be relayed to the city manager's office. I think we're going to be able to work through this. I don't anticipate the Pope coming to Chambers, but if he is listening, I'd welcome him to visit Palo Alto. That would be pretty cool. But yeah, but I understand the concerns. I think they're valid, but I think this policy is a nice way that kind of balances the interests and provides that flexibility that we're looking for. And I'm confident in the city attorney's interpretation of government speech that we're going to be able to do this in a way that is going to allow us to use our chambers in an effective and appropriate way. So that's my motion.
I'll second it. And I also want to, you're channeling where I was going, which is I really want to invite the clerk to let us know if this does become burdensome, because that's not our goal, and I don't think that is appropriate for this space. But if it's kind of business as usual and not burdensome, also if there's any issues that arise that we have not anticipated, I think this committee would welcome an update and, could make a recommendation. Because I don't think we necessarily want to do it on a temporary basis. I think we should just do it, but we should know that we can amend it if issues arise. So that's sort of my rationale for my second. And I had some, and I'm getting excited about the possibility of the Pope coming. But anyway, I don't know, do you have any further comment, Councilmember Lou? No? Okay. We're looking to you, Councilmember Lou, to invite the Pope.
Yeah, but not to council chambers.
Right, somewhere else, out front. Okay.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to clarify, does the committee want to see this policy again before it goes to council, or we're okay to put this on consent to council?
I don't think we want to see it again. I
Okay.
think putting it on consent's a different question. I'm getting a nod to my left. I'm getting a thumbs up to my right. So let's go that route. Thank you
Sounds
for
good. Thank you.
clarifying that.
Mhm.
All right, let's take a vote.
Councilmember Stone,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Vinker,
Yes,
Councilmember Lou,
Yes.
motion carries.
excellent. Well, thank you all for working through that and thinking so hard about it. I hope it works well to serve our community. I think this space is a little different than some others, and we don't have to be quite as generous with it. But I think this is a very nice, thoughtful result on this front. So thank you all. Future meetings, Deputy City Manager.
Yes, thank you very much. You have a special meeting on May 28th. And so that'll be in exactly 2 weeks. The packet will go out this week. We're anticipating at least 2 items on that agenda for you. One related to the management of contracts and the other one as the auditor risk assessment. And we'll see if we have one other item that can also make it. And your meeting after that is June, I believe, June 10th. And it's shaping up to be a lot of items on that agenda as well. We'll keep the committee busy. I also wanted to take the opportunity, the public speaker who spoke earlier asked a question about the CDAW ordinance, which will be an update we include in our next race and equity or wellness and belonging item to you, which will either be August or June. So just a heads up.
Okay.
And if I may, just to add on to Ms. Cotton Gaines's remarks, I just want to remind the committee that the special meeting on the 28th will be in the community meeting room, not in chambers as normal, as there is a Planning and Transportation Commission meeting in chambers.
Okay, thank you for letting us know that. Can you join remotely? Can you join remotely? Oh, darn. Okay. I'll do that. All right. Well, thank you all very much. Appreciate you all sticking around, and thank you for accommodating the schedule change that I needed. I'm grateful to all. I know it's later than one had hoped, but I appreciate that. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. And with that, we are adjourned.